Hello, my name is Rachel and I'm here with some new books that will be coming out this week. All of these should be coming out tomorrow, May 10th, which is also my mom's birthday, so if you're watching this, happy birthday, Mom! The first book that is coming out tomorrow is Reliant Illinois by Mary Vollmer. This is an adult historical fiction novel that takes place in 1874. It follows the story of a young girl who is born with a birthmark that covers most of her face, and it seems like the majority of this book is going to be centered around this girl kind of finding love and acceptance. It doesn't really seem like her mom is there too much to help her, and she ends up working for a suffragette, and I think that's where the book's main kind of theme comes in. Aside from finding yourself, it has to do a lot with women's rights after the Civil War. The next book is Theodore Boone, The Scandal by John Grisham. This is the 6th book in this series, and it's a book probably for older children / young adult, and, you know, kind of mystery thriller like his adult books are. This follows a kid lawyer who, I believe either one or both of his parents are lawyers, so he really kind of knows a little bit about the inner workings of the law system, especially in his small town. And this particular edition, The Scandal, follows a cheating scandal pertaining to standardized testing in a local middle school, and he kind of gets involved with this scandal. The 5th book in this series is also coming out in paperback tomorrow as well. The next book is called Valiant Ambition, George Washington, Benedict Arnold, and the Fate of the American Revolution, and this is by Nathaniel Philbrick. The very first book review that I did on this channel was another book by Nathaniel Philbrick called The Heart of the Sea, the history, or the story rather, of the whale ship Essex. And I really like the way he pulls the facts together to make a story. I thought In the Heart of the Sea was an excellent tale of something that could have been rather boring, but he did a pretty good job, so I would really be interested to read this book by Nathaniel Philbrick. And I think this is a nonfiction history book that centers more on like the key events in the American Revolution, especially pertaining to Benedict Arnold and George Washington, and I think it goes into a lot of kind of character analysis, if you will, of Benedict Arnold in particular, and how he became known as a traitor. Next up is Our Great Big Backyard by Laura Bush and Jenna Bush Hager, and the illustrator is Jacqueline Rogers. This book is coming out in honor of the 100th year anniversary of our National Park Service, and I believe this follows the story of at least one child who really doesn't want to leave behind those video games over the summer, but their parents decide to take them on a kind of cross-country road trip to see the national parks, and of course they discover their love for the great outdoors. This is a children's book that I think is going to be a very neat thing to add to any children's libraries, because I think it's going to be really cute. Next up is The Sun, the Moon, and the Rolling Stones by Rick Cohen. This is a non-fiction book that really focuses on music history, and it follows the story of Rich Cohen as a young journalist in the 1990s, following the Rolling Stones while they're out on tour. And the description of it sounds so reminiscent of Almost Famous. I'm just so excited because I love that movie. I love the idea of having somebody who's not really involved in the music world, kind of the in crowd there with the band, following them around and kind of just being enveloped into the atmosphere. I think this is going to be an amazing book, and I'm very excited to read this one. Next up is The Season of You and Me by Robin Constantine. This is a YA contemporary. This author also wrote The Promise of Amazing, I think is what it was called, which I've seen a lot of times here on YouTube, so you might be familiar with that one. But this book in particular follows the story of a girl who was just recently dumped. She had big plans for the summer with her boyfriend, but now here she is single, so she ends up as a camp counselor at this camp out of state, I believe, for her. And then she meets a boy who also is kind of having a rough summer. He had some sort of an accident, and now I believe he's paralyzed and in a wheelchair, and he's dealing with a lot of negative feedback from people. You won't be able to walk, you won't be able to do this, you won't be able to do that. So this will be his first summer back after his accident, as a camp counselor, and he's dealing with all these negatives, and these two meet and connect, and I believe there might be a little love interest going on there. So it sounds like an interesting take on some contemporary stories, and it kind of very shallowly, it reminds me of the premise for Before You by Jojo Moyes, which is really popular right now, which I refuse to read because I can't do the super sad. So maybe this one's a little bit more my speed because I don't anticipate it being, you know, super, super sad at the end. Next up is Thunderboy Jr. by Sherman Alexie, which is illustrated by Yuyi Morales, and this is a children's book, and I absolutely loved the Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian by Sherman Alexie, and every time I see his name now, it does catch my interest because that book was such a good book that I just really wasn't expecting. And in this, we do follow a family of Native Americans, obviously by the name kind of Thunderboy. In this case, he has been given the name Thunderboy Jr. because his dad is Thunder Boy or Thunder Man, I don't remember, but it has to do with thunder, so they automatically associate this name with this young boy, and this is the story of him coming to find his own name. It's not that he's, you know, ashamed of his dad, he doesn't want to be connected with his dad, it's just that he wants something that shows himself. He understands that, you know, the thunder represents what his dad has done in his life, and now he wants something that represents his own life, and I just think that sounds really, really adorable. And again, this is a children's book by Sherman Alexie that I think is going to be pretty amazing. Next up is a highly anticipated novel that I've seen here on BookTube, and that is Highly Illogical Behavior by John Corey Whaley, or Whaley, I'm not sure how you say it. This is a YA contemporary dealing with mental health issues, and this is the author of Where Things Come Back and Noggin, so you may have heard those around the YouTubes as well. And this revolves around a teen with agoraphobia, which means he won't leave his house. There was some incident that caused him just to decide he's not leaving his house anymore. And there's another teen that's a girl, and she wants to get into a psych program in the college she wants to attend, and to ensure her admittance, she's decided she's going to try to fix the teen with agoraphobia. And it sounds kind of interesting. I think for me, it seems like it might be dealing with some common issues that people have, like the urge to want to fix people on your own, and just some prejudices against people with mental illnesses. And from the reviews that I've read, it seems like the idea of mental illness is handled very well in this book, and I think this is going to be a good book, and I know so many people are waiting to read this one when it comes out tomorrow. Next up is a book called This Is My Brain on Boys by Sarah Strohmeyer, and this is a YA contemporary. I think this is going to be really cute. I had not really heard anything about this book, but I just randomly saw it on a list of books that were coming out and decided to read a little bit more about it, and I'm actually kind of excited about this one. Again, it's a YA contemporary. This revolves around a girl who decides to do an experiment, and she is wanting to prove for kind of like a science award that love is really based in science, because she's kind of more of she's not really a romantic girl. She's more of a science girl. She wants to really find out how people fall in love. And while she's doing these experiments, trying to create circumstances for her classmates to fall in love, drama and chaos ensues, and she finds herself falling in love with another boy, which she really didn't expect to happen. So I just thought that sounded really cute. I like that they brought in such a science element to a YA book. I don't feel like you see that much, especially in YA contemporary. I like the kind of twist on it that they have. Next up is Dave Hill Doesn't Live Here Anymore by Dave Hill. This is a comedian who you might have seen around. He's actually from Cleveland, which I think deserves props because it's Cleveland, but he's actually pretty funny, and I've seen him on At Midnight several times with Chris Hardwick, and I believe he's been on This American Life podcast several times, and this is his second book, I believe, and it's just an autobiographical essay collection, and I think it is just, you know, the typical humor short story collection. It's just true stories of his life. I think a lot of times it includes struggles, but it's looked at in a funny way, in a way that makes it seem, you know, more accessible and more relatable to everyone. So I think this will be a good and funny read. And I always recommend listening to comedians' books as audiobooks because their delivery, I think, adds a lot to these books. So I'm definitely going to wait for this as an audiobook. Next up is Save Me a Seat by Sarah Weeks and Geeta Baradaran. Ooh, I probably butchered that name. But this is a children's contemporary novel, and it follows a story of basically two loners in a school, and both of them have something that kind of makes them special. One of them is an ESL student, and another student has a disorder. I believe it is auditory processing disorder, and I think both of them get pulled out for a little bit of extra help during the school day, and they both come into contact with a bully, and I believe this story just follows them kind of coming together, banding together, developing a friendship to overcome this bully, and I really like the idea of the main characters having the issues. I feel like a lot of times when we talk about people with issues, that sometimes they can become a secondary character and other characters speak for them. So I like the idea that the two main characters, and I believe it's told from both of their perspectives. I believe it kind of switches off. They're the storytellers, and I like that idea. So this seems like a really cute book. Next up, we have The Summer of Supernovas by Darcy Woods. This is a YA contemporary, and on Goodreads, immediately it says, for fans of Jennifer E. Smith and Jenny Han, and I immediately was drawn just to that comparison. And this, I started reading this one and I haven't gotten too far. It follows the story of Wilhelmina, who I believe her mother has passed away. I can't recall offhand, but I believe her mother has passed away, and she was really big into astrology, and she left her this giant like astrology map of how her life was going to play out. And she's been following this ever since. She's really obsessed with the zodiacs and how everything plays out based on what her mother left. And she's heading into a time where her astrology tells her that she is either going to find the love of her life like this year or not for like another like 5 or 6 years. So she decides it's now or never, and she's on the lookout for the guy of her dreams, and she finds someone who doesn't match her astrology makeup, and she has to decide whether she's going to stick with what her mom left her or kind of go rogue and go with her feelings. So I think this is your typical YA contemporary, but I think this would be a great read for summer. And last up is a book called Braving It, A Father and Daughter and an Unforgettable Journey into the Alaskan Wild by James Campbell, and this follows a story of a man who is going to Alaska and decides to take his 15-year-old daughter with him. He's, has some worries. He's not sure if she's going to make it in such a harsh environment, but I believe she really flourishes, and they end up going back, I think, a couple of times, and then eventually they go back for kind of a rite of passage trip where they really are challenging themselves out in the wild of Alaska, and I just love these travel books like this. I think this is going to be awesome, and I love the added element of the father-daughter team out in the wild together. I think this is going to be a great book. So those are the books that I am super excited about that are going to be released tomorrow, May 10th, 2016. If there was one in this list that you really liked, let me know down below. If there are some that you know about that weren't on this list, please feel free to share those down below as well. And that is all I have for you tonight. So if you like this video, go ahead and give me a thumbs up. If you're so inclined, go ahead and hit that subscription button, and I would really appreciate it. And I really appreciate you watching this video. So see you again with another video very soon. Bye for now.